Okay, ladies and gents, good morning. Bon dia. Hello to everybody who's watching us live. I'm going to do a short presentation called Narcissism Writ Large, where we'll be talking about the macro impact of narcissistic psychopathy, and then we're going to see how that impacts us at a micro level for individuals looking to recover from narcissistic psychopathic abuse. The first concept that I need to cover, because I mentioned it yesterday and I saw a few blank faces, is the superego injunction. When I said yesterday that the culture operates from narcissistic psychopathic coordinates, I made that statement without saying why. I also said it was inevitable, but I didn't say why. So just in brief, superego injunctions. Yes. Oh dear. Invisible ink. The superego was a concept that was cited by Mr. Sigmund Freud. Jamie, I'm feeling very impotent here. I'm having a Freudian moment. And what he posited was the idea was that there was... Oh, it needs shaking first, and then it will emit. Good. The idea that there was a sort of a trinity in the self. The ego, our sense of self, our boundary between self and others, our boundary between self and reality, the id, the childlike animalistic impulse, and then the superego, which operates as a kind of parent above all, or you could say it as your conscience. So his original in German was just ich and then über ich. And you don't need to speak German to know that that just means the over self. So he had the idea of the over self. So when you, as a small human, are born, you need to learn the cultural coordinates of the tribe in which you are born into. For most of evolutionary history, that would have been a grouping of around 50 to 150 people. Understanding and knowing the cultural coordinates is imperative to survival. We're unique in that way as mammals. So we have evolved this part of ourselves that picks up cultural coordinates. This is good, this is bad, this is forbidden, this is a good thing to do. If you go over here, there's a snake pit and you will die. If you go over here, there is sex or food or something that is life-affirming. And all of this is picked up, Freud posited, by this particular part of the self, which is the superego. So whether you like it or not, there's a part of you that's absorbing very, very quickly from childhood the unconscious coordinates of the cultural environment in which you find yourself. It's very, very powerful. As I mentioned yesterday, if we're only looking at the content of the culture without looking at the context, we can miss an awful lot of the unconscious coordinates. What this thing does is it doesn't do any quality control. It's essentially a recording and replay device, and it's pretty stupid. It's pretty dumb. It just records and replays. So if you're raised in an environment where the adults in your environment are saying to you, you are good, you are healthy, you are of benefit, you contribute, the superego records it and then faithfully replays it throughout life. And then you could be said to have healthy superego injunctions. The recordings that are replayed and sent back to you throughout your life, we call these injunctions. Why? Because in psychoanalytic theory, they like using complicated words. So these are the higher self recordings, the higher self messages. It's your conscience, effectively. However, if you were raised in an abusive environment and you were told that you were worthless, that you didn't have value, the superego just records those messages and replays them stupidly. There is no quality control. It just faithfully replays the recordings to you. So where does this impact in a cultural context? Well, what we have across time economically is a culture where people, largely speaking, bought the things that they needed in order to survive. But at a certain point in that model, we started asking questions, we, humanity, how do we make more money? How do we make more money? So then we had to convince people not to buy the things that they needed, but to buy the things that they wanted. So once you, bless you, once you're transitioning from need to want, how do you do that? Especially if you have a collective of human beings who isn't used to that. They're not really interested in that. What you need is Freud's nephew, Mr. Edward Bernays, to come along and say, we are now going to inflame people's desire. This is why I'm claiming that the culture is operating from psychopathic coordinates. What they deliberately set out to do, knowingly, was to hack the unconscious and hack the superego injunctions to convert people almost to a new religion. So because of the Judeo-Christian worldview was the norm at that time, most people were ashamed if they overindulged. The Protestant ethic would be, don't overindulge, don't enjoy too much. Too much pleasure is bad. So we went from a model that said, only take what you need. Pleasure, excess, luxury is actually sinful. It's actually sinful. And the superego injunction would say, if you're eating too much cake, having too much sex, having too much of a good time, you're doing something bad. And the superego would control you by firing off feelings of guilt and shame. I'm now enjoying too much. So what they did was they said, well, we want people to buy crap that they don't need, but that they want. So what are we going to do with the superego injunction? They had to invert it. They had to invert the superego injunction. How do you draw people to going from a humble state of only acquiring the things they need in order to survive, which is quite sane, isn't it? I'm just going to buy what I need, what my family needs, and I'm going to survive with it. You have to do something quite evil. In order to inflame people's desires, you basically have to provoke them in the weakest parts of the human psyche, in the vulnerabilities of the human psyche. In the old Christian worldview, these would be the 7 deadly sins. So you provoke them through wrath, you provoke them through sloth, you provoke them through lust, and hence the advertising industry was born. All advertising is provoking and pushing at one of these 7 deadly sins. It's provoking human weakness. I've said it before, social media, I believe the fuel of social media is envy. If you took envy out, nobody would log in. There'd be nothing there to do. There'd be nothing there to see. And it's why the social media online space is so intrinsically hostile and aggressive. Sorry, Jacob, I need to get a tissue, mate, so I'll disappear off screen. Oh, there you are, dear. How are we? Good to see you. Oh, we're going to get into the evils of technology now. So the online space is intrinsically hostile. The jungle is not neutral because the fuel of the online space is envy, and everything else in that online space is there to evoke desire, to evoke agitation. So I've been in sales and marketing and advertising and psychology since 2002, and I've done multiple courses on this, and I can tell you the sine qua non of good advertising is agitation. It's agitation. If you are feeling relaxed, if you're feeling okay, I can't get you to purchase. I have to agitate you. I have to make you feel less than so that you will desire something and you will go from a need to a want. This is just played out all day, every day, again and again and again. Be angry, be envious, be lazy, be lustful. Why? Because when the human being goes into a state of lack, you start to think, well, I must need something. You really don't. You don't need anything, but you're provoked into it. The end goal of this is we end up with what Slavoj Zizek calls the superego injunction to enjoy. So this is an inversion. Previously, we would have said if we're enjoying too much, the superego injunction would say, don't do that. That's really sinful and naughty. Feel guilty, feel ashamed. Now people feel guilty and ashamed if they're not enjoying enough. So excess has become a new psychological need. You must over-enjoy. But you might think the superego injunction to enjoy, that sounds a bit weird. Okay, but you all know what FOMO is. FOMO, the fear of missing out. That's the superego injunction to enjoy. And it's very, very powerful. It's very, very strong because it's completely unconscious. This sense of agitation, the sense of lack, I would claim, is largely indoctrinated into you. And it's indoctrinated into me. We all suffer from it. Nobody is safe because it's in every single element of our culture. It's in all of our ideological coordinates. that we swim in. You can't even do a seminar on psychology or philosophy without these coordinates being present. It's a fundamentally narcissistic, psychopathic culture that instead of saying, be humble, be grateful. Imagine that. If all the advertisers tomorrow just said, just chill out, man. Just be with your mates. Like, go and listen to the bird song. Imagine that. Just go outside, listen to the birds, hang out with your mates. You'd be like, wow, yeah, that's a really, really good idea. But they're not going to do that because that would be terrible for the economy. Imagine if one day, we set up a movement. So for one day every year for 24 hours, we're just not going to purchase anything. And on that day, we're not going to do anything. We're just going to hang out with our mates and go to the park. Breaks the machine. It breaks the machine. You cannot, we, the evil dark overlords, we can't afford that. You can't have that happen because it would break everything. So you need more agitation. You need more frustration. This is not just to get you necessarily to buy sneakers, to buy clothes, to buy cars. It's also to get you to buy politicians, and you purchase them with votes. You will get that. So we live in a world where there is a superego injunction to enjoy instead of a superego injunction against excess. Why? What did I do with the pen? Oh, it's in my back pocket. Why is this relevant to what is happening at the micro level? Do you all get the superego injunction thing? You've internalized it. It's a voice that it keeps running, but it's not just a voice. That's too simple. It actually functions as a part of you. So inside of us, we have a part of us that is psychologically colonized by advertising, by marketing. And it would be very, very, not impossible, but difficult to get that out. So it is a voice. We can hear it as a voice sometimes, but it functions as a part. And this part actually has an intention, an end goal. So the part that is indoctrinated here, the end goal is just to keep you buying, just to keep you frustrated, to keep you scrolling, to keep you commenting, to keep you angry, and to keep you in the consumer cycle. It forces an obsession, not with need, but with luxury. And that's the trick. And you can't have democratized luxury. There cannot be luxury for everybody. That's not how luxury works. So what you end up with is false luxury and the false signaling of luxury. Not everybody can have a luxurious life. That would not be luxury anymore. That would just become the new baseline, and then we'd have to reset, and then the next thing would be the luxury. Does that make sense? Everybody can't be living the 5-star elite luxurious life. That's not going to work. So we know this. We all know this, and yet we don't know this at the same time. So you're walking around with a sense of confusion and frustration. Was it Lacan or Zizek that came up with the superego injunction to enjoy? That's Lacan. Okay. Jouissance. The fetishist split. That's Zizek, isn't it?
Mostly Zizek took most of that from Lacan.
That's Lacan again. Okay. I can't take Lacan directly. I need the sniffy Slovenian philosopher to filter it for me. I just can't. I just try and read Lacan and I'm like, I don't know what he's saying. So another concept that Zizek took from Lacan is the fetishist split. So we all walk around knowing, feeling it in your body, in the marrow of your bones. This is wrong. This doesn't make sense. And yet we continue to live as though it does. That's the fetishist split. So fetish being that something that has no intrinsic value has been imbued with magical properties. People usually think sexual fetish. Of course, fetish originally would be something a shaman would carry. The bones of my dead ancestors. I can point it at you and curse you, or I can point it at you and heal you. Why is that a fetish? Because it's a thing that has no power, but that has been imbued with energy, a sort of a magical thinking. I'm saying that this is powerful. We all agree that it is powerful, and it becomes powerful. A bit like money, a bit like fiat currency, which in and of itself, you can't do anything. You can't eat it. You can't even barely burn it. It's useless. But these promissory notes have fetishistic power because we all agree, humanity agrees this thing has power. Same with sexual fetishes. It just means that in order for it to be a fetish, the thing that you fetishize doesn't have any intrinsic libidinous properties, but you've imbued it. The human being has imbued it with power. So that's where the fetishist split comes from. So culture at a certain level, I would argue, consumer capitalist, crony capitalist, corporate capitalist culture is intrinsically abusive to the extent that it must enslave you. Like if I'm in charge, I'd be like, sorry, dudes, I need your slavery. I need your submission. Like otherwise the whole system collapses. Not impersonal. That is what it is. I need you over-consuming. I need you obsessive. I need you agitated. I need you mentally unwell. I need you feeling alienated. Because if you all just go off in a little community and you're just looking at each other and then your hormonal system's balanced because you're in contact with other human beings, you feel seen, you're contributing to a community and everybody's happy, that fucking sucks for me. I can't get you to do a thing. I need your suffering. I need you to suffer. I need your agitation. You being happy is terrible for me as a marketer. Your faces. This is too much for a Sunday morning. It's way too much. So the claim is that this then becomes internalized. So we internalize the abuser. So I'm saying that we have an internalized abusive cultural coordinate, let's say. So I said it has an intention. If you were raised in an environment, let's take childhood trauma and then we'll do the romantic narcissistic abusive scenario. So in childhood trauma, obviously you would internalize the messages of an abuser. Your father ignores you. And so there's no active abuse. So you think, well, I wasn't really abused. My dad was a bit distant and not really available. That's still abuse because you're created, if you like, you're evolved to want the validation of both of your parents. You want your parents' love because love is survival. If you don't want to use the word love, we could say time and attention. Time and attention. I need that care. Otherwise, I'm going to internalize the idea I'm not lovable. And you'd say, well, did your dad hit you? Did he put cigarettes out on you? And say, no, he didn't. He was okay. He was, but that's not meeting the child's needs. Anything that happens from the father or mother that's actively abusive. Let's say you have a mother who's an alcoholic, she's psychotic, and she's actively abusing you. You're also internalizing the idea, I must be worth hitting. I must be useless. I must be worthless. I must be evil. Sexual abuse causes us to internalize the same sorts of superego injunctions to the point where you start to feel intrinsically evil, intrinsically ugly, intrinsically diseased. Because why else would the gods of your childhood treat you in that way? It must be your fault. So you internalize these superego injunctions, and yes, there may be a voice that says, don't start that new business you're thinking of. You can't do it. You're a fucking idiot. You're going to ruin it. Don't. You're a failure. Don't do that. Everybody's going to laugh at you. You're going to fail and everybody's going to laugh at you. Say it's a business that you're trying to start up. That's the voice, and you might hear it. What you won't hear is when the superego injunction, which has an intention for you, which could be for you to fail utterly. That superego injunction's intention could be to destroy you, to get rid of you from the planet. If that's what you internalized as an abuser's intention was, that's what's running inside of you. This is a big problem and it's urgent. It's not some cosmetic psychological issue. So if the intention of this part of you is to destroy you, the very decisions you make on a daily basis will be governed by this. How many of you have been in narcissistic abusive relationships? Did you find in the 6 months after the narcissistic abusive relationship, you made really stupid decisions with your life, with your health, with your money, self-destructive? That's this. It's the intention. You've internalized their intent and you're running that now as a program. Yes, you'll hear it as a voice sometimes. Sometimes you'll hear it as a voice. This is not orthodox psychology. This is my thesis. This is my claim. The other claim I would make is a large portion of emotional flashbacks. Do you all know what emotional flashbacks are? Okay, anybody doesn't know? Cool. A large portion of emotional flashbacks actually come from the superego when you have CPTSD. So the superego, imagine this. There is a smaller Richard in front of me. Use your imagination. I'm the superego, and I'm not a good superego. Richard is in front of me, and he says, I'm going to start a new relationship. I'm going to take control of my health. I'm going to start this new business. He's going to do something that's good for him. As I observe him start to move, off the boundaries of the map that I'm allowing him to live inside of, as he does that, I'm going to fire off the emotional flashbacks to stop him. And it'll feel like he stood on a landmine. He tried to get the... No, you may not. It's not a democracy. You can have the microphone in a moment, though. And, eh? No, you have to have the microphone. No, because people can't hear it. That's why. Yeah. So once you start stepping outside of the map, the emotional flashbacks will kick off to stop you. So the moment you make that appointment to get the loan to start the business, you will become overwhelmed with feelings of despair, guilt, shame, depression. And you'll say, why is this? Must be me. I must be crazy. The superego injunction has an intention for you, and it doesn't include you getting a hold of your health. It doesn't include you getting better financial health. It doesn't include you having better relationship health. And if you try to do it, it will bomb you into submission with emotional flashbacks to coerce you and keep you in place. You will also hear voices. I mean, you've all heard this. We call it the inner critic. So you'll actually hear something. But what I used to do is I used to split the emotional flashbacks and the inner critic into two separate problems. I think now it's the same thing. I think it's a superego injunction. And I suspect most emotional flashbacks are not coming from the environment. Remember we used to say that? So if you were in a situation in childhood where you were made to feel impotent and powerless whilst being abused and you were held in place, and then for some reason, some vaguely triggering scenario would play out, maybe you're in traffic or something, you get exactly the same feelings. So what we tried to do is link that as though it was PTSD. So there's a trigger, a visual trigger, auditory trigger, kinesthetic trigger, and that's created this response. I'm claiming it's actually all internal. It's all internal. It's actually the superego's doing it. And it will typically be when you're trying to move off the map. Because if you're traumatized, you probably have a fairly tight map. There's probably a fairly narrow range of things that you allow yourself to do. This is normal. And when you try to expand that, the superego says, no, you can't do that, and will stop you from doing it. So you end up with a situation where you feel very, very limited. And when you try to move forward, you just find that you can't. You say, I can't do it. And who do you blame when you feel terrible because you couldn't move forward? You. You blame you. And you fulfill the superego intention by doing that. It's all your fault because you're a bad person. So my sort of fixation at the moment is dealing with superego injunctions, is to help people to overcome superego injunctions. And I think one of the most powerful ways for doing that was presented by Pete Walker, who wrote the book, CPTSD from Surviving to Thriving. And I had some interactions with him online about this. He said one of the things that we can do, so whether it's at a macro level or at a micro level, one of the things that we can do, the first thing to do is to identify the superego injunction as that. So it's not you, so that you can then say, this is not me. This is not my voice. This is not my intention. Have any of you reached that place in your therapeutic? Yeah. That's pretty good progress. You're like at a blue belt level if you can do that. For most of us, most of our lives, we just respond to the superego injunction because we think it's us. So what my therapist calls that, he's a transactional analyst, very, very nice man. And he's a Londoner, and he'll say, you've blended with it. You've blended with your injunctions. Stop blending. So blending, don't blend. Don't blend. Try to get clarification. Try to individuate from this. How will you know it's a superego injunction? Tune in to your body. Mark was saying yesterday, and I wanted to add to it, but my shoulder was too sore and I just shut up. The feeling that you get in certain situations intuitively inside the body is very, very important. And I think you were talking about love. Oh no, you were talking about the cult experience, being very excited, feeling very calm.
Yeah. Natural versus fervor.
Natural versus fervor. Okay. So if you weren't here yesterday, it was a reference to the way you can feel activated to do something. And if it's very intense and hyper-adrenalized and you're a little bit bug-eyed and like, wow, this is the new cool thing, that's a different somatic subjective experience to just feeling like, yeah, this feels good. I feel calm. Do you see how this relates to this? Sometimes we're activated by the superego injunction, by the part as a consumer. Do it now. Let's go. And even though it feels good and you're like, yeah, this is really exciting, it's a little bit hysterical. It's a little bit emotionally dysregulated, a little bit unboundaried, whereas you can have a different experience where you go, yeah, this feels good to me. You need a degree of alignment with your feelings. So Darren mentioned yesterday, emotional literacy. There's a difference between saying to yourself, oh, I'm really excited to do this, and then having the emotional literacy saying to yourself, I'm excited to do this, but I notice I'm also feeling a little bit of a sense of dread. And it's tinged with like this really, really strong desire to overreact. Or it's when you start breaking it down and pulling apart what you're actually feeling, it's a little bit numb to just say, I'm excited to do this. What are the emotions that make up the excitement? A lot of our excitement is tinged with dread. Not everything that you do that excites you that's tinged with dread is something that you shouldn't do. Sometimes excitement does come like that, but it's good to notice it. So you have that somatic experience, you tune in and you say, what is it that I'm actually feeling now? Does this feel like something that's going to be good for me? Or am I getting overexcited? So back to my therapist, what he would say in the situation of, say, like a new cult, this is the solution. God, this is what I've been waiting for. I'm now hyper excited about it. Is he would say that's actually activating a part of you. So sometimes when relationships are bad for you, or there's a potential cult situation is bad for you, there's actually a part of you that's not you that's saying, go do that, because it has an intention for you to get you trapped inside of another abusive cult, to get you trapped inside of another abusive relationship. What I'm saying is there's a part of you that's pushing you back into abusive relationships because that's all you're worth. That's all you're not worthy of love. Go get abused again. Oh, if I did my therapy and I finally got out and I escaped him, I escaped her, great. Oh yeah, did you? What are you going to do now? Oh, I feel a bit depressed now. Where's that feeling of depression coming from? Oh, I'm feeling anxious now. Where are those feelings of anxiety? It's a coercion, I'm claiming. It's the superego going, oh, you thought you were leaving the map. Get back. Go find somebody else. Go do it again. And then we say, we use Freudian terminology and we blame it all on childhood trauma and say, oh, it's a repetition compulsion. And I don't think it is. I think it's active coercion via the superego state. Hello. It's all right. You just did a visual wipe on me and I've forgotten everything. Wow. My shoulder feels so much better today. The active coercion via the?
Something visual state.
Thank you. It's good to have an autistic friend at the front of the audience. He's remembering everything I'm saying. So, yes, active coercion from the superego. Instead of saying, okay, this is just a repetition compulsion. This is a part of you that actually wants you to suffer. It likes you in pain. It likes you enslaved. I'm not trying to frighten you, but I'm trying to give you a sense of urgency that this is something that must be resolved with in therapy as soon as possible, because otherwise you're going to keep doing it. This just becomes your natural boundary is abusive. Your natural boundary is exploitative. Like, I'm happy, you must wait. Everyone must wait. No, I don't let you. No. See that hyperactive state of excitement with the eyes bulging? Eyes are bulging. It is bed. Wait. I will come to you. So once you've realized that and you can identify it, and you can say, okay, I'm feeling a little bit shaky here. I'm feeling a little bit hyper-adrenalized because it's what's blending is that terror possibly from your parents, from them screaming at you, from them abusing you, or some other incident in childhood. And that's now become blended to, oh, here's an abusive situation with abusive people that maybe I can conquer them. Maybe I can win this game if I play it again as an adult. Does that make sense to you? Okay, that's a concept from Adler. Everybody talks Freud, everybody talks Jung. Take a little time to have a look at Adler as well. He was the third person in the psychoanalytic trinity that people don't talk about. So he would say that whatever had oppressed you in your childhood, you want to dominate in adulthood. And he's the guy who created the term inferiority complex. And he would even say with sexual fetishes, sometimes it's an internalized vision of something that dominated you in childhood that you then want to dominate and control in your adulthood, which possibly could be. So does this make sense on identification of the superego injunction? That means that you have the power, you have the potency, as my therapist would say. You've now got the potency to unblend. You've got the potency, and I'm like, yes, this is beautiful. I'm being told by a Cockney gangster how to deal with my childhood trauma. You've now got the potency to unblend, and you can see it for what it is, can't you? Yes, I can. Thank you very much. It's lovely. It's nice. I feel much calmer now. So you've identified it, and you can say, this is not me. Now, Pete Walker's advice, which at first blush looks a little bit strange. So imagine a situation where you are going about your daily life and then you get hit with this impulse to, I don't know, maybe it's to call your ex or to do something stupid or to take drugs or whatever the issue is that you're battling with. And you can say, you can hear a Cockney in your head going, I don't think that's you. I think that's a superego injunction that you've blended with. And you say, okay, this is not me. This is now not me. How? The challenge, so we've hit challenge number one, we've mastered that, we've been able to say this is not me and I can identify it. How do we unblend? How do I create distance with this? It's a strong impulse. So this, in transactional analysis model, what Mark was talking about would be the activation of an abused part. So the excitement wasn't even Mark's excitement. It's a part of him that is craving more abuse. So it's hard to control that. It really wants it. And the feeling that you get, you've all had it, it almost doesn't permit impulse control. So Pete Walker advised a method called angering. He calls it angering. So you actually allow yourself to become angry with that part and then fight it. If you're on your own, you could do it out loud. You could talk out loud. Angering is challenging that part. Angering is challenging that superego injunction. I don't want to do that. What is the point of you telling me to do this? What's the ultimate intention of you telling me to do this? Where is this going to go? What's going to happen if I call up my ex-girlfriend? What's going to happen if I go and sleep with my ex-girlfriend? Something great? Am I going to feel really cool afterwards? No, it's going to be bad. What's going to happen if I go and take drugs or gamble or whatever it is? And you actually, by evoking a sense of righteous indignation, you're doing two things in your system. You're saying that is not me, and you're creating distance with the thing that is not you. So when I was discussing this with him, I said, so in martial arts, we would call that a yang strategy. A yang strategy, masculine, outgoing, aggressive strategy to deal with that part. And then he said, but there's a second part of this, which is nurturing. This is his language, nurturing. So you've identified the part of you that's actively trying to get you to do something that you don't need to do and shouldn't want to do, or that is not good. So let's say we've identified it's not good for you. You use angering to push back against it. The nurturing side of it is to say to yourself, okay, so what should I be saying to myself instead? What should I be saying? I don't want to do this thing. Maybe I've not identified some need in me. In transactional analysis, they identify all kinds of different hungers. So we do have a hunger for drama. We do have a hunger for conflict. We have to recognize this and not fight against it. You have to try to find ways of feeding these hungers in healthier ways. So the nurturing side of you say, okay, what is it that I really need here? And what could I be saying to myself? If my superego is healthy, what would it say? And this is a yin strategy. It is feminine. It is receptive. It is what you would call the creation of safe spaces. You all know the yin-yang model, I'm sure. So it's a more internalized. It's inward seeking. It's into the past, whereas yang is forward seeking, off away into the future. By doing this, you create the space internally between this impulse. Once you've done that and you've created the space between the impulse, the work across time. Mr. Terence, how are we? You all right, mate? Yeah, sound, kid there. The idea across time is to work on each of these superego injunctions. I'd rather you did it with a therapist. You can do it through journaling, and you can identify the different parts. And you can even say, well, who does this sound like? Oh, this sounds like my father. So did my father tell me to have low impulse control and drink too much? Yeah, I guess he didn't really want me to succeed or go higher than him in life because he's a highly narcissistic man. But a little bit of a black belt clue for some of these things. Sometimes all of us have internalized our parents' parts. So you sometimes have to resolve some of their issues through you. So if he had low impulse control, if he was psychopathic in certain situations, I inherit that part. I have to heal it. I have to heal it because it's now a part of me. So it might be that the parent has given you an active direction, an active injunction: fail, be a fuck up, don't do well in life, or they may have struggled with that injunction from their parents. Intergenerational trauma is fun. Super, super funsies. And you need lots of therapy, especially here in Liverpool, where we're the Irish descendants and we've created all sorts of chaos, Mr. Taylor. Plus you mix in a lot of Catholicism, and it is a wonderful, wonderful melange of guilt and shame and mysticism. Jacob, I need to press the magic wand, do I? Yes. Embrace. 1, 2, 1, 2. Okay, I will come to you in just 1 second.
I have a question.
You have a question?
Yeah.
Question?
As you were speaking about the replay, I was thinking about Julian Jaynes, bicameral mind stuff, the other voice in your head. And then I was thinking, and I'm wondering what you think about this. Do you think this is what they called the devil?
Yes. I think when you're praying in Islam, I think they have the idea of nafs, which is almost like the Jungian shadow. There are parts of us. So throughout time, I sort of think across human history, we didn't have this. This is tech. This is technology. I mean, transactional analysis grows out of Freudian psychoanalysis, and I think it's a vast improvement inside of, you're talking about a vast improvement technologically inside of about 30 years. Freud's model is good, but this is something else. And I just think, wow, across the centuries, how would we have dealt with this? Like 3,000 years ago, I just have this overwhelming impulse to bash my neighbor's head in with a rock. You wouldn't be like, well, you've got part of you that you've blended with. No, you'd say you are infected by the devil, my son, and then just slap them around and try and exercise them. I actually watched Jordan Peterson today talking with Alex O'Connor. And Alex O'Connor was saying to him, so do you believe that possession is real? And Jordan Peterson goes, well, it depends on what you mean by real. I mean, clearly some people are at times possessed. Would you say to the police, if you saw a shooter, that man was possessed? And he went, well, no, not exactly, but the mystical biblical... And you have to sort of say, okay, what we're struggling with, as you alluded to yesterday, and Paul spoke about a lot, is right now, at this point in human history, we're struggling with our metaphors. Our metaphors are just smashing into each other. Our frames of reference are smashing into each other. And I don't know when we started saying literally. But it's definitely increased in my lifetime. And why are we saying literally? Well, we don't mean literally most of the time, but why do we have to keep doing that? So yeah, there is this fight amongst, with the maps. We're fighting over maps of reality, not reality itself. So yeah, I think it would have been the devil and possession in other times, for sure. Did that answer your question?
Yes.
Oh, very good.
And more.
And more. Yeah. Do you want to ask? Yes.
Okay, so I just would like you to go back, and if you would, and define emotional flashbacks.
Okay. So in brief, PTSD. Do you know what PTSD flashbacks are? So, roughly speaking, we would say like PTSD would be a singular incident with a singular type of flashback that has visual and auditory and kinesthetic cues to the original incident. I was beaten up in, let's say, a nightclub bathroom in a nightclub in Liverpool, and I smelt bleach on the floor. And then I go in here and I smell the same brand of bleach, and I go back to the visual, auditory, and kinesthetic memory of that first experience. You don't need to do that. you just walk. It's okay. I did enjoy it though. Like, we can still see you. I am invisible. It's like being back in school, this, isn't it? I love it. So what? Yes. So there's you could say with PTSD there's a more direct link, and it's simpler. Complex post-traumatic stress, we're saying we don't really know what the stimuli are. So complex PTSD was identified by Judith Herman in a book she wrote in 1992. She's now a professor of psychology at Harvard, and Judith Herman. She saw that the cluster of symptoms between political prisoners and people who've been tortured was very, very similar to children raised in adverse environments, abusive environments. And she said, oh, there's a form of PTSD that's complex that seems to take place particularly for people who couldn't escape. And it went on and on and on and on and on. And instead of there being like a metaphor sometimes uses, if you imagine shooting at a range and you use a pistol, you have one bullet. If you use a combat shotgun on the target, it's not one bullet hole, it's just multiple little bits and pieces of fracturing. The emotional flashback is the memory, but it has no visual, auditory, or kinesthetic information. So nothing flashes into your head that says, oh, this is because my dad hit me in the car when I was 6. You just have the emotional memory of feeling frightened or ashamed or whatever. It's in your body. And
so you can't link it to anything that's not sequential or anything like that?
No, nothing. And the problem with that is you feel crazy. Because you could be at the shop just buying milk and then you're crushed by feelings of despair. Who do you blame? You can't blame the milk. So you're like, I'm mad. So the guilt and the self-blame and the self-persecution then gets worse.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
As far as I have understood, the superego is changed by use of the 7 sins in advertisement, which basically, if we grew up with Christian values, it's how it's attacked, like it's tricking us, because they are using all our weaknesses and all our fears to change what we...
Sorry, I should have been clearer. Even if you didn't have Christian values, I'm raised Christian.
I actually had. I was grown in a country, if I would...
One second. The reason, just so everybody understands... the reason why I use the 7 deadly sins is because I don't know of an easier, simpler, more effective way to describe what's being done. So when I'm saying the 7 deadly sins, I'm not saying this will work for Christians but not for non-Christians. I'm saying that's a nice way. Christianity did a good job. They said, okay, we've encapsulated human weakness. Go ahead.
Like, I grew up still in a country without advertisement and without all the values.
Which country is that?
I grew up in Poland, still in communistic times. So until 89, for
no,
the lifestyle we have now, it was completely abstract. If someone would try to sell themselves and present, oh, I want, you would be like, come on, you calm down. It was bad. It was a bad thing to be. Second thing, which it was very interesting for me when you said about the anger, because now it seems to be like we are pushed to believe that being angry is bad, being sad is bad, you shall always be happy. So if we want
which is more of this marketing nonsense, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like, but now it takes me to my question. There is something like intuition. You said we feel that something is wrong, but intuition tricked me twice in my life. What is intuition for you? How would you define it? And how to make sure that the intuition is not tricking us into getting into another, let's say, infected by superego relationship.
If you're traumatized and you still have PTSD, you're emotionally illiterate and your intuition is not going to work.
So how to heal the intuition we can trust it?
Do it again. The other thing is if you have these infected superego injunctions, they will present themselves as intuition. So the ego is ego generally is a big topic. Ego is very, very slippery, and yeah, it will whisper to you and it will say like, no, this is a good thing that we're doing. We're doing this out of humility. We're doing this out of spiritual compassion or some nonsense like that. You can just tear that bag of biscuits open. It's going to be way quicker. Go ahead, do it. Bang. Muito bom, muito bom. That was going to be a painful 5 minutes for me. Go ahead.
So basically, if someone was traumatized, all the process you said about identify the injunctions, feel angry about them, and identify what we really need, etc. We can only do it if we heal our own traumas. Otherwise, we cannot trust our own intuition.
Yeah.
And this was very interesting thing also what you said for me, because I, for example, realized that I'm looking for things which are familiar to me, which is why I'm looking for abusers in my life. And it's very important aspect, because I think it comes to the same, that until we heal our own traumas, we always fall in our own trap. Like, I cannot trust my intuition until I'm really sure that if I'm free from the past.
Yeah, exactly. So if you are traumatized and you're on a sliding scale of CPTSD, where I would say, so if you can identify and say, it's actually quite hard for me to hold down a job. It's actually quite hard for me to do normal things that everybody else seems to be able to do without stress. And it's hard for me to maintain relationships. You have a fairly high degree of CPTSD, I would say, as a sort of a rule of thumb, as it were. At that point, my advice to you, my gentle suggestion to you, and what I did, I'm not telling you how to live because I can't do that, but what I did when I realized that was I actually made a deliberate and conscious project to recover at least a little bit from that. Because if you are emotionally dysregulated, all of your perceptions are warped. So if I'm emotionally dysregulated, I've got superego injunctions up the wazoo, and I'm flashbacking all the time from multiple stimuli, intuition, like the radio signal can't get through.
And from your private experience of various therapies, is the transactional analysis the best thing, or
No,
is
I
it?
don't know. Like, I'm very lucky. I get on well with my therapist.
It's very interesting. Like, for me, this part of therapies is the most complex one. Like, I'm just touching the subject of the.
I'm complex.
We all are complex, I guess. But
no. What I'm not saying. What I meant to say. Sorry, is I intellectualize things, and so for me, it's pretty good because I like intellectualizing stuff. But for other people, like my sister, it's a nightmare, and she just wants somatic therapy. So yesterday I said, like, if you had a martial art. If I worked with you in martial arts, it would be your martial art. The same with therapy. So transactional analysis is like based on Freud, but it's better than Freud. And we've got bits of Jung, and we can talk about the parts. Have you seen the transactional analysis maps?
I saw.
It's crazy. It
This
looks like ancient
try it.
hermetic magical symbols of complexity. And I'm there going, this is fucking cool.
Yeah, exactly what I'm thinking. So
But
it's
for
why I'm
other
asking.
people, plus I really get on with my therapist. So
It's very important.
First and foremost, the therapeutic relationship is the top thing. And I've had great results. There was a woman I used to see who did CBT, and I don't think that much of CBT therapy, but she was a brilliant, intuitive, kind but strong person who pushed me where I needed to be
It depends
pushed.
a lot on the personality of the
Huge amount. It's
counselor.
like when people say about martial arts, which is the best martial art. I'm like, you could get a great martial art with a shit teacher, or you could get an average martial art with a great teacher.
And I got a bit more, I'm sorry, because since yesterday
You
I
must
was...
be fast.
I will be very fast. Like, the systemic approach, because it's a new thing to me. Like, since yesterday when you spoke in the morning, I actually keep thinking about it. Like, all the system is infected by, let's say, the 1 up till 5% of people with certain traits who basically infect the whole system. How many percent of people would need to be aware and like actively doing something against to change the system? Is my first question. And second is, I grew up in a communistic country with completely different values. Now the values are pushed like into all the marketing. You need to get what you want, not get what you need. But what was happening with the people with such traits in the other like communistic systems? Like how they were fulfilling their voids before. Like it's like, it's I just started thinking now. So have you got a question? How do you think narcissistic needs were met by people in cultures without all this by society where you got all the marketing? It didn't exist.
I will answer your question. Thank you. To your first question, roughly 30% of the population
Need to be aware to
have very extensive work to do. Have very extensive work to do. Most of the people in this room have quite a bit of work to do.
Can I have,
No. Yeah.
What makes the 5 people?
Wait, no. Shh. You must let it go now. It has happened.
Not there yet. I need to
Let it go. Yes, you do. To your what was your second question?
How were people with?
Oh, yes. Okay, got you. The communist countries question. So I have worked in and lived in and loved in ex-communist countries, and communism does not do good things for people's psychology generally. And I think the incidence of narcissism and narcissistic personality disorder shoot through the roof. You can speak to your friends in the Balkans if you want to, speak to Romanians, Bulgarians, people from Bosnia, Croatia, Serbia, and ask them what they think about the state of narcissistic personality disorder is in their country, and they will tell you. I go to Romania. I do no marketing, no advertising whatsoever. It's all done by word of mouth, set up in a hotel in Bucharest with about a week's notice. I can fill it with 100 people. Obsessed with narcissistic personality disorder, receiving tuition on a pretty niche subject with hard English. The English is not easy. It's psychoanalytic theory. 100 people show up. We have to turn people away. It's a big problem in former communist countries, a big problem, because narcissistic personality disorder is a defense to trauma. And for these countries, it was massively traumatic. So the only way out was to escape through fantasy. Yes.
Just quickly add to that one. Basically, the totalitarian leader works as the massive superegoic injunction voice.
Yeah.
So it's institutionalized.
Yeah.
But I have to ask a question. So it's like Jeopardy. What do you think of the following quote? There's a guy, Austrian guy, I think it was writing in the 1900s, called Krauss, but it just goes to your point about fetishism. He said the most miserable creature on earth is the shoe fetishist who has to settle for the whole woman.
Yeah, it's nice. Any other questions? Oh, yeah, okay.
Can emotional flashbacks, or a flashback, manifest as pain in the body?
I'm in pain right now. Deep emotional pain. Yeah, I don't know. I'm being very, very careful because I haven't studied this, so I really don't know. I've only gotten feedback from my clients across the years, and the number of people who have what's the cluster of illnesses that's related to your immune system? Autoimmune. So there's loads of autoimmune disorders that pop up. I don't know much about it. The resolution of it, I don't know. But yes, I've anecdotally have observed a correlation. Yeah, yeah. Thanks. Yes, this lady.
Just interrupt.
Yeah.
Batteries in the mic have just died.
They've died.
It's just going to replace them for us.
Okay.
Thanks for your question.
So I'll feed your question back. So I'll say a question back again. Yeah. Go ahead.
So my question was, so the superego can also be described as the conscience.
Yeah.
It can't all be bad, right? It can't all be bad things. So isn't it that, so you hear this thing, you have a conscious trigger, whatever, and then you ask why, right? You check it. You check it, and you decide, is this, do I want to act upon it? Do I think this is a good thing, or do I not want to act upon it? Right?
Yeah.
So are they not able to do that? Like, because it works with your consumerism model too. Like, if I need something, or I want something, but do I need something? The checking.
Who's not? You're asking, are they not able to do that? Who's they?
Highly treated narcissistic people. Like people that, why is, if it's just a script, the superego is a script, and I'm acting upon it, where's the checking process to make sure that my actions are based on my authentic self?
You're looking for a checking process?
No, I haven't.
Oh.
I'm asking, like,
You're asking.
doesn't that fix that problem? Because that
Yeah.
your super ego. I mean, people with NPD. Well, or any traumatized person, I think.
If they got them inside, they could not.
I mean, CPTSD is a spectrum of
Yes,
and
yes,
anyway, whatever. I'm not gonna teach it, but my point is that if you're not just listening to your superego and acting,
Mm-hmm.
and checking it,
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't that avoid a lot of this?
Yeah, that's what I was teaching for about an hour. That's what I was trying to sell you on, the idea of checking in with your superego injunctions. Does that answer your question? Yeah. Okay. Yes. Yes.
Oh, there is no mic. Okay. Why 5% of people can infect the system, and why do you need 30% to change it? Why
I made up the number 30% because you said how many people need to change, and I would say if I'm walking around the streets of Liverpool, I would say so. There's a number of people that probably should spend about 6 to 9 months of their lives in an almost monk or nun-like state of recovery. They need that space. They need to heal. I'm not a multi-billionaire. I can't provide you with the resources to do that, but it's around 30% of people are severely traumatized. But to answer your first question, the reason why they can have such a negative impact is the nature of the pathology is so vicious. It's so vicious that and they seek to overtake all systems. Any questions on this side? Okay, ladies and gents, thank you very much for your time and your attention. Let's take a 10-minute break and come back at 10 past. Thank you.